Cryptids are fun to research and talk about. Speculating on whether or not we share this planet with strange entities we have no understanding of is certainly exciting. Some seem more plausible than others, and some defy explanations. The Creature from the Black Lagoon is a film that everyone should be familiar with. Even if you haven't seen it, you'll easily recognize the antagonist, the Gill-Man. He may not be the most popular monster from Universal's roster, but he is a favorite of mine that I think deserves more respect. So imagine me shocked to find out that real-life Gill-Men supposedly reside in our waters. Before getting into this, I want to address that Gill-Man, or any other cryptid that vaguely resembles a scaly humanoid, are commonly lumped into one lizardman category, ranging from frog to gatorman. I will be specifically talking about cases that strongly resemble the Black Lagoon lurker. The earliest encounter with a fish-like humanoid comes from Louisville, Tennessee, in 1878. Allegedly, a creature described as being 6 foot 5 inches tall, with large eyes and fish scale skin, was captured and placed on exhibit. It said the creature acted in, quote-unquote, the most mysterious manner, and displayed signs of aggression when captured. The creature was silent and fed large amounts of food that consisted of regularly prepped meals with raw fish. It was noted that its scaly condition could not be attributed to any skin disease, as it must have been born this way. The island lake remained as its hunting ground, and presumably home, where it would dive underwater for a considerable length of time before emerging with fish to devour. Nothing would come of this strange reptile man after this report, leaving the whole incident shrouded in obscurity and mystery. I don't know what to make of this. It is really bizarre, but with no further account of this fishman or fishmen being seen again in the area, I kind of doubt that this actually happened. If it did, then some moments could have been scrutinized for a better, more enticing story. 1937 brings us with a new sighting of a similar creature in Saginaw, Michigan. A fisherman reported seeing a man-like monster climb up a riverbank, lean against a tree, and dive back into the water. The fisherman was so startled by what he had seen that he began to have a nervous breakdown. Any other information about this encounter is very scarce, with no description of what the creature looked like or if it was ever seen again in the area. But the fisherman's reaction makes me believe this one even more than the last. What exactly did he see? This next report occurred 18 years later in the Ohio River near Evansville, Indiana. During a hot summer day in late August 1955, Naomi Johnson sought to spend quality time with her children and friend, Louise Lamble. All seemed to be going well when suddenly, Naomi was grabbed by her foot and pulled underwater by someone or something. She managed to break free for a few seconds before the creature would yank her back down again. Hearing Naomi's struggles, Louise managed to swim by just in time for Naomi to break free again and grab onto their inner tube floaty. Once on shore, Naomi's leg was seen to be bleeding from a few puncture wounds, with a green handprint imprinted onto her leg that would last for a few days. She described the feeling of what grabbed her as a large, furry, claw-like hand. After Naomi's encounter was shared, she was later visited by a man who claimed to be a colonel in the US Air Force, who took extensive notes on the case as he interviewed and questioned her. Before leaving, the colonel advised Naomi to never speak of what she encountered ever again. The behavior of the colonel was rightfully compared to that of the Men in Black, given how secretive and interested he seemed to be. Coincidentally, the day of Naomi's attack would also be the same day of the Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter, further connecting the story to an extraterrestrial encounter. Naomi believed there was a connection to be made, reasoning that before the attack, a flying saucer was seen overhead. Although the story of Naomi's attack is rarely mentioned in conjunction with the Hopkinsville encounter, a quote by her would later be misattributed to the former, as the term, little green men, was said by Naomi in relation to her attacker. Some speculate that Naomi was dragged into the water by a strong undertow, with a handful of trash and debris wrapping around her leg, emulating the feeling of something grabbing onto her, along with loads of other trash, giving the illusion of a monster. A year prior, The Creature from the Black Lagoon was released in theaters. Could Naomi have been subconsciously inspired by the film when describing the attacker? There are no reports of Naomi having seen or mentioned the film during interviews. Perhaps we'll never know. In late March 1959, a green-eyed, 7-foot, armless humanoid was seen rising out of Charles Mill Lake, leaving behind footprints described as looking similar to footgear worn by divers. 4 years later, the same creature will be spotted once more, lurking around the murky waters. Another monster who's been spotted near the lake is a Sasquatch known as Orange Eyes, leading some to believe that this is the lake monster. The time frames make a lot of sense, as both encounters took place on the same day, March 28th, and both creatures share similarities in being very large with the glowing eyes. This is an odd sighting, and whether or not it's related to Orange Eyes is still up for debate. Concluding this list with the most popular case out of all the sightings here, the legend of the Thetis Lake Monster began on August 19th, 1972, in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Two teens, Robin Flewellen and Gordon Pike, witnessed a 5-foot-tall, scaly animal emerge from the lake and begin chasing them. The creature got close enough to Robin and cut the boy's hand with its razor-sharp spikes protruding from its head. 4 days later, another pair of teens, Russell Van Ness and Mike Gold, reported seeing the same creature near the lake, but unlike the previous report, it only emerged from the lake, looked around, and submerged itself back into the water. The boys described the creature as having a human-like body with silver-colored scaly skin, a pointy head, and very big ears with equally big eyes. As with other stories, the creature would never be seen again after this period. However, we do somewhat have a conclusion to this particular legend. In 2009, a skeptic known as Daniel Loxton debunked the story of the Thetis Lake Monster in an issue of Junior Skeptic magazine. Initially, the monster was believed to have been a misidentified pet Teju lizard who found its way into the lake by escaping its owner a year prior. The description of the lizard was close enough to what was reported, giving the officers involved enough reason to close the case. Loxton thought the idea of a pet lizard roaming the lake wasn't realistic, later proving his point after an expert concluded that the lizard likely had no chance to survive for as long as it did with the weather conditions. Loxton would discover that a week before the monster's first sighting, a local TV station broadcasted a 1965 creature feature, The Beach Girls and the Monster, also known as Monster from the Surf. The Gill-Man seen in the film bears a strong resemblance to the description in the second sighting, right down to the creature's pointy head. The final piece of evidence to solidify this as a hoax is brought to us by an interview Laxton had with one of the boys from the second sighting, Russell Van Ness. He confessed that the story, quote-unquote, was just a big lie conceived by his friend for intention. The Thetis Lake Monster never existed. What still remains unsolved is the first sighting from Robin Flewellen and Gordon Pike. Their description of the creature is different and feels a bit realistic. It wasn't described as looking humanoid or resembling a B-movie monster. It was a small animal that could have been anything, and the fact that it injured the boys makes me believe this sighting even more. I don't think a teen would willingly give themselves puncture wounds for a silly hoax, at least not back then. I'm not saying for certain this is true, considering everything else involved with the cryptid is a hoax, but this part of the story is still something to think about. Quite a bizarre series of stories, huh? They all take place at different places and different times, but share the common theme of having a fish-like humanoid roaming around. There is no denying that majority of similar fish or lizardman sightings after 1954 were either subconsciously or directly inspired by the creature from the Black Lagoon. It wouldn't be the first time pop culture influenced a cryptid. The Loch Ness Monster wasn't recognized as a plesiosaur-type animal until the release of King Kong in 1933. Although this doesn't disprove all sightings, as many took place before 1954 that involved all sorts of weird amphibians. The idea of reptilian humanoids has been around for years, with stories that predate pop culture interest. It makes me wonder if these creatures actually existed in some shape or form. Nonetheless, it was fun to research and look back at these cases of frightening lake monsters that are believed to still swim in the darkest depths of our waters.